we got into good afternoon now. The earlier session was so interesting, and I know we are behind schedule, so we'll try to keep it as short as possible. I am very, very delighted to be here, speaking in Trivandrum, maybe for the first time in my life. I went to kindergarten in Trivandrum 5 decades ago. I also did my primary school in Trivandrum, but after that we have only had few visits. I am very happy to be here and talking. As you heard about my introduction, I am a waste manager. I don't come from a very glorious profession. I am a waste manager. We collect waste, we treat waste. That's what I do, day in and day out for the last 15 years. All kinds of waste. Very smelly, very sticky, very toxic. This is what we keep doing every day. And today we try to give sustainable solutions to the world based on that. And I have a very, very stellar panel with me. And they will bring out to you various facets. We will try to bring to you all many facets of on sustainability. And I would like to welcome to the stage each of the panelists. I would first welcome Architect Mahesh, a legendary figure in this field, well known to the people of Trivandrum, South India, so needs no introduction here. Second on to that, I would invite my good friend Pradyut. He is from Adani Group. We'll do a better introduction later, but for paucity of time, Saurabh from NIIF. He is into investment. Is an investment advisor, and I understand he now helps people on investments on the green field, because today we are talking all on green, zero emission, zero pollution, resource recovery. All those things is what we are going to talk over the next 75 to 90 minutes. And last but not least, Madam Dr. Sudeshna from Delhi, please come to the stage. So, without much ado, we will keep talking as we go on. Without much ado, I would like to call Architect Mahesh onto the stage to deliver his keynote address. And as you know, I would, in 2 words, describe him as an architect and an academician, a trendsetter, a professional architect. He founded the School of Architecture at Trivandrum in 2021, and he's now being more known in the field of sustainable architecture. He has been giving more shape into wood-based designs and on the neo-traditional. He is also a writer, amazing timber resorts, and there is a biopic, Mahesh Architecture, I understand. So, welcome Mr. Mahesh, and let's listen to him, and then we take over from that. And look forward to your participation. This time we are looking for more participation on the sustainability part. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. My good friend Bobby, who is going to moderate and lead us on this undebatable debate on sustainability. Sudarshan Chatterjee, Saurabh Suneja, Dhanashree Pandey, and Pradyut Maji. But I don't see one person here. Everybody has come? Okay. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Okay. My dear friends, Rajesh, Jha, Dr. Sahadullah, Mr. Padma Kumar, M.R. Subramaniam, Wing Commander Ragashree, and all the past presidents of TMA. I have a responsibility when I was invited, because I happened to be yesterday I heard from Najib and others that I happen to be the only person to be honored as a lifetime achievement award. So, so I should be thankful to TMA, and I am always. Okay. Now, this is a subject which is a little difficult, as you know, because there is no one solution. No one person can come with a solution, not even one country. You need the gamut of all the countries. So I won't use the word solution. I changed the topic to, without Bobby's permission, I'm taking an anticipatory bail. I changed the topic to way forward. Okay. The great Mahatma Gandhi rightly said what he should say. The 5 great challenges in sustainability issues are protect and restore nature, clean our air, second one. Third one is revive our oceans. The third one is build a waste-free world. And fifth one is fix the climate. It's easier said. 10 years to save the world. After more than 200,000 years of human history, our species stands at a very critical moment. The choices we have in the next 10 years will determine our future. Our world is full of stories how we have destabilized our planet. The stable climate, the reliable rainfall, the benchline shores, the rich soil and the self-cleansing air. But now everything is gone. And we are now in a very desperate situation. A Kenyan tree lover, Mangari Maathai, he has established 6,000 community nurseries, 6,000 nurseries. The culture of organic architecture, reforested green timber architecture, and what we call green certified timber. Stratospheric, which was not it's a word coined recently. We have, in the past 3 centuries, wrecking nature's own infrastructure, 6 trillion trees have become 3 trillion trees today. It was once biosphere, but today it is stratosphere. Look at the planet, the living planet. Our air is breathable because living organisms keep it so. The living organisms are very important. Most of us don't understand that there are more than 40, 50 insects in a tree, large tree, 40 species of insects, and hundreds and millions of insects in a forest. So when there is a destruction of the forest, the flora and the fauna is all devastated. Our water is today potable because the living organisms constantly purify it. The forest, the grasslands, the marine ecosystem, and the wetlands are the lungs, livers, heart, and kidney of our world. We should not forget this fact. We have lung, heart, kidney, but the world also has lung, heart, kidney. And it is all because of the forest and the microorganisms. You look at the oceans, almost nowhere of the ocean in the world is untouched. According to an author, 100% of all the sea turtles have plastic in their stomach. Can you imagine your children and yourself, your mother, father, living with plastic in our stomach? These poor turtles are swallowing plastic because of the ghastly, cruel mankind. This is a sad situation of our country. People are throwing plastic on the road, in the ocean, in the river, and this has to stop one day. You look at air, choking on progress. Billions of us are breathing polluted air every year. The health effects are devastating. To an estimated 7 million early deaths annually around the world. 200,000 every day. People are dying only because of pollution in the air. It is an intangible cruelty on mankind. Most of us would have little thought about the black smoke from the chimneys of the brick kiln. How much of smoke that comes out of the brick? When I say brick kiln, it also includes the industry. It's not just a brick kiln. You can make, the world as a whole makes 1.5 trillion bricks a year, which pollutes our universe. You look at the climate back from the brink. The entire Maldives will be sunk in the next 50 years. today what is the most beautiful paradise on earth is sinking thanks to heating of our air and the climate change, because the Arctic and the Antarctic are melting. And where will the water go? They will raise the sea level. And when they raise the sea level, already Maldives have started sinking, and most of you know it has come in many newspapers and magazines and television shows that Jakarta itself is sinking. One of the biggest cities in the world, Jakarta, or the most populous city in the world, is sinking because of the rise of the sea. You look at the Amazon forest. A third of the tropical rainforest it represents, and it's 10th in the world's biodiversity. 1/10 of world's biodiversity is in Amazon. It is one of the biggest carbon sink. Today what we need is to create more carbon sink, and the world, and home to 2.5 million people from an estimated 350 ethnic groups. You look at urban forests. This is a view of Hong Kong, the island, Hong Kong island, not the Kowloon, where the town planners in Hong Kong, unfortunately in Kerala we have no town planning, only town destruction. I wish these experts who are town planners and city planners understand the pathetic situation of our state. You look at the aerial view, city planners are increasingly cottoning on to the fact that it is possible and beneficial to build nature around the building. In my opinion, every city, in my opinion, should have at least 14% of the land under biological cover. This is my personal formula. The top experts, one of the country's best experts are here. I went through their Google and I find all of them are so brilliant. And they may or may not agree. But I think 14% of every city should have a biological cover. You look at the wind energy. This is in Liverpool, Crosby's Corner. Advanced technology has coupled with clean air, and clean energy suggests the growth will. This segment is going to be in a big way. You look at our own MR Narayan, AdTech, Subramaniam. Solar power. They are floating solar power on reservoirs of dams. This is the first time and the biggest company to do this. Right now in Trivandrum, it's headquartered in Trivandrum, all of us know the people. So solar power, you don't need earth. MR Narayan and Subramaniam are floating solar power panels on floating barges on waterfront or rivers or dam reservoirs. Now I come to fixing our planet. We have to protect and restore biodiversity. Predators are key to many of the ecosystems, whether you like it or not. They are like the lead instrument in our orchestra. But our other species matter too for the music to play. It is nature's full repertoire, and the carnivorous through the herbivorous and plants, right down to the smallest bugs, the smallest flies and the fungi, that ultimately matters. Ecosystems and their resilience is a phase of change are found on what we call biodiversity. This is a great big issue. It is easily manageable issue. But the governments are not doing, we are not doing. You and me are wasting food after lunch. An obvious solution is needed to reduce food waste. A third of the food is either left in the field or rot in warehouses or lost in during shipping or discarded in supermarkets or simply scraped off our plate. If we ate up all our food, the world is already producing enough to feed all of us. The world is producing enough food for all of us, but we are wasting it in so many ways. And many of us also need to change our diets, in particular to rely less on livestock. Of course, I am a vegetarian, I would say that. Look at farmland. The 20th century saw a revolution in how the world grew its food. You look at the green revolution. I'm just speeding up for you because I have been given a time, I know that. Modern crop breeders say that there is a great potential to produce high yields with lower inputs and much less pollution. Precision farming is the name of the game. We are now not yet fully endorsed on precision farming, which is very important to us. Vertical farming. Near Copenhagen, there is a vertical farm and thousands of tons of salad vegetables a year is grown there. Another version of the same idea comes from Vertical Future, a startup based in the unlikely suburb of South London has started vertical farming and Vertical Future. If you look at agroforestry, sharing agricultural land with nature often goes under the title agroforestry. The African Forest Landscape Restoration Initiative plans to create 100 million hectares of agroforest in, can you imagine 100 million hectares, which is 250 million acres of land by 2030. Agroforestry has the potential to increase food security for 1.2 billion people. According to the United Nations, Africa may have fewer forests, but more trees. If you look at the river, most of the river do not go to the ocean because it is vandalized on the way. People are misusing the river. They are taking water out of the river. So the river you don't see, you know the Periyar and all these rivers, they don't go to the ocean. Most of the world's wetlands have been drained or cut off from the rivers. To restore nature to our continental Mars, we need to rewild the rivers. The buzzword is rewilding the rivers. You look at mangroves. Without the protective barrier of mangroves, how can you protect our wetland or the riverine system or oceanic ecosystem? Mangroves in the bay can survive up to 60 years. And mangroves will grow almost anywhere in the tropical areas. Mangroves don't grow in non-tropical areas or north or south pole of the world. Clean air. So much, how can we purify clean air? There are some crazy ideas. I don't know how much of them are possible. How can we restore the chemical balance that the atmosphere on Earth has maintained? The rise of electric vehicles has been dramatic. The International Energy Agency anticipates that by 2030, 60% of all the automobiles on the road will be EV, electronic vehicles. 60%, because that is a commitment countries like India and Western countries have given in Rio de Janeiro and Kyoto Protocol. We have undertaken to achieve 60% vehicles by 2030. If you look at Elon Musk, whose company Tesla powered electric cars, his story shows that green technology has become a smart way to wealth. So I am asking the question, why be a banker when you can be a green technologist? Because Elon Musk was not an investor, but he is bigger than any banker in the world because he tucked himself to green technology. Chlorofluorocarbon, CFL, is another area where the households eat cooked food on open fires and inefficient stoves. If we increase our stoves, in our younger days, there used to be smokeless chulas available at 40 rupees, 50 rupees. My grandmother used to bring from the local market, from Kannimara market. These are small things which our parents did, but we are not doing today. But we are having inefficient stoves, and they are all death traps. These inefficient stoves are death traps. The solution is simple: the distribution of better cooking stoves that burn more of the fuel and create less of fumes or less of smoke. So we need to improve and have better cooking machines. If you look at COT, it is hard to fix. Industries and transportation systems are responsible for 1/5 of the CO2 emissions in the world, unfortunately. So if we need to get the net zero emissions, like, the aeroplane industry is doing better. The planes are generally built to minimize fuel use. They are made of aluminum and controlled by smart systems and fly in the thin air for 10 kilometers. You look at hydrogen versus EV. Some say that we should forget electricity for transportation. Well, we have all signed for electricity. Now we have come to hydrogen. They see hydrogen as a new fuel, not electricity, for running your automobile and powering trucks, ships and planes, and making everything from cement to concrete. I am sure in another 15, 20 years, the hydrogen technology and hydrogen power will overtake EV. Take it from me. Because hydrogen is less polluting and cheaper to make and cheaper to manage than electronic vehicle. We should chart a course for a hydrogen economy to replace our existing fossil fuel economy. You reduce energy needs. That is another area. We don't need to put our air conditioner at 18 degree or 20 degree or 22 degree. Like me, I put the air conditioner at 27 degree or 28 degree, which is good enough for 2-3 hours. So don't run the air conditioner in full blast. Passive cooling is very important. You don't need any other tiles on the roof. You only paint it white. It will reflect 90% of the UV rays and the heat. You know how the Santorini or Mykonos of Greek islands, where the resort hotels are. All the Santorini where I went last year, all the buildings have white color, and that is a rule. That is a government regulation. Technology challenge. Many corporations promise to achieve zero. Geoengineering is another area. It is to cool the planet by shading it from solar radiation. Other ideas include covering the oceans in white polystyrene balls, which is easier said, but Japan and some countries are doing. They are covering the ocean with polystyrene balls, pumping salt particles from the ocean into clouds to make them brighter, mimicking the cooling effect of volcanic eruption by scattering sulfate particles in the planet. Of course, these are happening, but not as a generality, but as a kind of example. The second is nature-based solution, which require, such as great carbon absorbers of forests, peatland, coral reefs, seagrass meadows, salt marshes, and mangrove swamps. Global treaties, these are the global treaties, have been conducted over the last 50 years, starting from the Ramsar Convention. We have Ramsar land in our Ashtamudi and our own Kumaragam and Vembanad Lake. Government of India have identified patches of land which are very delicate to ecosystem. These are called Ramsar land. Many people in the state doesn't know. There are a lot of patches in Ashtamudi, Kumaragam, because I am designing resorts, I know. And these are all Ramsar land. So Ramsar Convention, Bonn Convention, Montreal, Rio, Kyoto. Bonn Convention started reforesting protocol. Now I come to the last. It is only after the last tree has been cut down, the last fish caught, and the last river poisoned, that we realize that after all we cannot eat money. I have to acknowledge, I have not met Thomas Friedman, but I have met Al Gore in his house in Washington, Virginia, the great Carl Sagan, David Attenborough, the great, Colin Butfield and Hawkes are great biodiversity pundits, and Rob Dunn, of course, is a top-class ecologist, and of course, Mahesh Peak. Thank you.
Thank you, Mahesh. That was very comprehensive. Starting right from the Alps, going down to Kumaragam and Ashtamudi. He brought in a lot of fantastic concepts on which I hope we can develop with the panel. And some of the points that I liked on what he spoke, which we'll be taking up. He said, we are doing cruelty on mankind. That is, we are mankind, we are doing cruelty on ourselves. He talks about fixing our planet. He talked about fossil fuel economy and finally ended up with Ramsar land, which I myself heard for the first time. One of the things that he spoke was about saying that we have the right person for that with us today, Dr. Sudeshna Chatterjee. She is an urbanist, urban planner, designer, researcher, evaluator and educator, a PhD from the United States North Carolina University, currently Program Director at WRI. She works on cities that are childhood friendly, child friendly, and that is her main focus. That's what she told me also. We would like to hear from her, particularly answering to what Architect Mahesh spoke about, that we need our cities to be fixed. Over to you, Dr. Sudesh.
Good afternoon, everyone. I would like to thank the Trivandrum Management Association for extending this invitation to me to come and speak to you today. Even though I'm from Bengal, I live in Delhi, I do have a Kerala connection. I'm a daughter-in-law of Kerala. So I'm quite familiar with Trivandrum, especially, because I visit quite often with my family. My submission today to you on this particular topic, which is really very close to my heart, of prosperity beyond profit. As an urbanist, we are very, very interested in developing the whole idea of equitable cities. And in the age of climate change, it is all about how do we craft low-carbon pathways to urbanization and urban development to create cities that are both prosperous and equitable. And that is the topic of my presentation today. I'm actually very much going to focus on one aspect of this, which is about land expansion, which we are dealing with in every city without planning, without any kind of management, and that is creating a lot of problems that we face in Indian cities today. So we all know that we live in an urban majority world. It's more than 56% urban in 2023, but in just about another 25 years, every 3 out of 4 people on earth will live in cities. And globally, if you look at it, cities are extremely important to wealth creation of nations. Globally, 80% of GDP, global GDP, are produced in cities. And equally, we talk about in planning that there is a correlation between economic growth and urbanization. And even if you look at some of the most urbanized states in India, those are also the most prosperous states. But we have to keep in mind that this correlation of wealth creation in cities gets broken very quickly if you do not have industrialization, job creation, or very poor supporting infrastructure and services. And you only have to look at African cities to see how this correlation gets broken. Let's come to India. We are about 31% urbanized according to 2011 census, which is the only census, the latest census we have even today. And here we have to understand one thing. India, in comparison to other countries at same economic level, is actually a very slow, moderately urbanizing country. It is not urbanizing fast, it's a big myth. What is happening in India though? The scale of the urban population is very large. Again, 377, 2011 figures, much more now. Our urban population is bigger than the size of the United States. And the urban problems are also very, very, very big. Let's just look at, I tried to summarize this, that cities actually occupy only 3% of India's land. But its contribution to our GDP is about 60%. Which is why a lot of focus on urbanization in the post-liberalization era. And we had the first sort of flagship mission on urbanization, JNURM, and now we have smart cities and Amrut and all these schemes coming out. Interesting to note, India till date does not have an urbanization policy. Our urbanization is being shaped by these large urban programs and missions. At WRI recently, we had been engaging with the national government, and we were asked to give recommendations for a national urbanization policy, and I had been leading that work. So a lot of the stuff that I'll show today is the kind of data-driven analysis that we are doing to understand where urbanization is, where it needs to go, what are the current sort of facts and figures on this. So in terms of challenges, but India also is a very ambitious country. Our Prime Minister has committed to becoming net zero by 2070, becoming a developed nation, as well as a USD $30 trillion economy by 2047, 100 years of our independence. How do we achieve these ambitions with this kind of there was this cartoon that I saw when we overtook China as the most populous country in the world, as compared to their bullet train. We have this local train of India overtaking that train with everybody, coming out of the windows and roof. So that is how we are in a way moving ahead, okay? If you want to move with everyone ahead. But is that the way forward? So we are also the 4th largest greenhouse gas emitter today. Everybody talked about, we've been talking about inclusion and equity since morning. We all know how poor the urban infrastructure is, the infrastructure in our cities. We know the problems of and how little is planned in our cities, and especially in the peripheries of cities. We have so much of problems with water, with ecosystem degradation, and the growing inequality. But there are also opportunities. So if the urban population is going to double by 2050, and the McKinsey report of 2010 talked about that India has to build some 34 Chicagos to accommodate that growth. And only 2-3 days ago, there was this announcement of India building 8 new cities. So if that is going to happen, 70% of India's urban infrastructure is yet unbuilt. We have to build it by 2050. And this also gives us an opportunity to learn and correct from the mistakes of the past to say, how do we address spatial inequalities that we see in our cities, the service deficits, the environmental burdens, etc. And to us, the way forward is really about building low carbon, equitable, and more prosperous cities at the same time. It's a very tall ask, but what does it really mean? Again, there is all this, wonderful talk about India when we look at some of our top cities, how their economies are the size of countries. Mumbai, the economy, the GDP economy is the size of Malaysia, Delhi, that of Philippines, etc. What we don't talk about is that the figures of these city-based economies are built on the shoulders of informal employment. And 80% of our urban employment is generated via the informal sector. These are typically low-paying jobs with very little social security. So there is a dire need for job creation in all urban areas. And we all know that if you want to lift the base, you have to invest in labor-intensive jobs, not just manufacturing, but other kinds of jobs. And I think the government of Odisha has this wonderful scheme, the Mukta scheme, you may know of it, with the returning migrants after COVID. They had this huge problem. How do we feed this population? So they created this urban wage program and it's all technology-based. There's an app. You can go and say what skills you have, and the government will match you. They are building their infrastructure through other programs, state government programs, of stormwater drains, of parks, open spaces, slum upgrading. They're linking these through this urban wage program to actually build these urban infrastructure, which is really fantastic, and it has been awarded all over the world. It's really the talk of India right now is Jaga Mission and Mukta scheme from Orissa. When you talk about inclusion in urban development, they are worth looking at and emulating. The other thing I want to point out is that 80% of the national employment is to be found within the 50-kilometer ring of large cities, some of our 7 mega cities, which means most of this employment is in peri-urban areas. So at WRI, it's a global organization and we work on sustainable cities. So we looked at some 500 cities across the world and we classified them in terms of where they are today in terms of income and what the prospects are for tomorrow relative to population growth. Most Indian cities fall in the categories of emerging and struggling cities. And this is mainly due to unplanned and unmanaged urban expansions without adequate infrastructure and a lack of concern for the environment, as architect Mahesh so correctly pointed out. And large parts of our cities are informal settlements without core services. They are underserved, without access to transportation, affordable housing, water and sanitation, energy, etc. So all this provisioning is yet to be done. There is a high investment need, and I hope, Saurav, you are able to speak to this because I'm not a finance person. And the other study that we are doing right now at WRI is we ask this question, where is urban growth happening? And we actually did this for 4,041 statutory towns of India, and we found more than 30% of the urban growth is outside municipal limits, which means it adds to the burden on infrastructure gaps and the financial burden on utility companies as well. So you're also, because of this whole peripheral growth, which is outside of planning jurisdictions, etc., there we see so much of haphazardness, this growth of slums, unauthorized colonies, all kinds of jugaad in terms of services, etc. That brings me to the question of planning. So we are a very underplanned country, even though our master plans are the only kind of statutory legally binding plans we have for cities. Only 40% of our statutory towns have master plans and 20% of census towns. So here, and the urban expansions are completely outside the perimeter or the jurisdictions of these master plans. Here, technology could possibly play an important role, and the Amrut reforms talked about it, of doing GIS-based master plans to leverage the power of AI. We are also looking into that. How do we, especially for these little towns spread over, these thousands of 5,000, close to 5,000 census towns, which are in under rural governance even now, how do we capacitate them? Here, leveraging AI, satellite imagery could actually accurately help us map land and its uses. What's on that land? What is the environment looking like, etc. And because of all this unplanned, unmanaged planning, there is loss of ecosystems. Again, another study that we did for 10 cities in India, recently published, found that about 44% of the new development around these 10 cities, big cities, are happening in areas which have very high recharge potentials, again in the peripheries. And most of this is happening, this is Bangalore, in violation of master plans, in proposed green and blue spaces of the master plan. So there is a huge problem of land management in India, and also how do we create planning. The story of lack of infrastructure is well documented. In pretty much every service, we are lagging behind the basic standards. But I would like to point out, again, because of the topic of this conference, we don't talk about the urban service divide much. For you and me, it's one thing. For somebody living in slums and informal settlements, it's something else. Whether it's water supply, whether it's housing, whether it's transport. Even the best provision cities in India only have 71% water supply at the household level. Only 77 of our cities have any kind of public transport. And we have like 9,000, 10,000 cities, much more in the next census. We don't talk about the multiple hazards. India is one of the most hazard-prone country due to climate change. And this wonderful study by CEW at a district level showed that 491 districts actually have some kind of extreme hazard, and about 165 districts have multiple hazards. And there is also a differential vulnerability to it, that whether it's heat stress or flooding, and this is a map of Nashik where we were doing climate action planning, we found that 50% of the most hazard-prone locations are the locations where the urban poor live in our cities. So all this points to the need for, oh, these are challenges, but it also tells us what we can avoid. How can we learn from all this? How can we plan for development to address these multiple hazard risks to climate change? How do we create more labor-intensive infrastructure integrated development? And this is my last slide. So here, the three key principles for us really are about everything that we do has to benefit the underserved, benefit the economy, and benefit the environment. There is a big role to be played by regulations and plans and policies and incentives to prioritize spatial equity over land speculation that we are seeing in all cities, incrementally increasing the supply of service land by forming all kinds of partnerships to finance the core services in our cities, and to integrate existing informal settlements and create affordable density. Because this whole thing of expanding outside is very, very unsustainable. And just a last word, that Professor Shlomo Angel of New York University runs this lab which monitors land expansions across the world. In India, land expansion is happening at 5 times the rate of population expansion. But we talk about creating compact, connected cities. If this is our urbanization trajectory, we can never achieve sustainable development. So, in fact, this, and I hope this panel as well as the audience could deliberate on what should really be the role of technology to sort of solve this very large, intractable problem of our largest natural resource in this country. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sudeshna. Thank you especially for keeping it within time. Main takeaways, she talked about cities, how important are cities, 80% of GDP, just covering 3% of the land. She also told that India is the 4th largest greenhouse gas emitter in the world. And most importantly, she spoke about the financial burden that the urban cities are creating on development. Where do we have the money? How do we fund it? But before we go into funding, that we go to the last part. We again go back to one of the questions that architect Mahesh raised, that was about the hydrogen as a fuel. And we have with us Mr. Pradyut from Adani, a chemical engineer. I think now calls himself a green chemical engineer. He's been associated in concept to commissioning of projects which are into green energy and now working on green hydrogen gasification. So let's hear from him on how hydrogen is going to be fuel for the future. Over to Pradyut.
So thank you very much. Thanks Trivandrum Management Association, and thanks wonderful delegates. So privileged to be here to present on green hydrogen. So just to be in same page, I think everybody knows what is green hydrogen. So few words on green hydrogen. So traditionally we make hydrogen through fossil route. So fossil route could be coal, could be natural gas, could be crude oil. Crude oil means, then petrol, diesel, refining one. So anything you produce through fossil fuel route, the hydrogen called gray hydrogen. Okay, gray or black. Now when you produce this green, the CO2 is the culprit, the gray hydrogen, right? So gray hydrogen along with it will produce some CO2. Now the next color is coming the blue. So whatever the CO2 you are getting, if you don't emit into the atmosphere, if you utilize or put in underground or whatever, then that hydrogen call it blue hydrogen. Okay? And the next one, what I will talk about, that is green hydrogen. If you don't make hydrogen from any of the fossil fuel route, you make only green power, not even black power. Black power is coal-based or natural gas power. 100% RE power, renewable energy power. It can be wind, it can be solar, it can be hydro, or nuclear, whatever. That is green. In between green and blue or gray, there is another terminology called turquoise hydrogen. What is that? if you pyrolyze methane or any, hydrocarbon, that will crack into hydrogen and carbon particle like coal. Okay? Basically, you are not producing any CO2 or you are not emitting any CO2. If you produce that hydrogen, that is called turquoise hydrogen. So I hope everybody now clear about what I am talking about. So this is the slide on CO2. Everybody knows that the temperature is increasing because CO2 is a culprit. 169 parties already they have signed. They are agreed that yes, this is the time to act. We should go for CO2 neutral target. This is the ranking. So you see that India is now third largest emitter of CO2 emission as you speak today. And India is the world fastest growing economy in 2023. So this is the deck talking about what are the sources of CO2, right? So biggest one is the electricity and then followed by other industry, and those are the percentage, 33%, 24%, 10%, 18%. So where is the play of green hydrogen, right? So wherever the electricity is there you can directly, replace with green electron. Like let's say first one, 33%, right? The electricity that can be 100% green electron, not molecule, okay? Similar, the light load or light road, this mobility sector, right? We are talking about EV electric vehicle. There you can have 100% green energy in future. And then, this agriculture sector, so a lot of, agriculture sector, they use the DG set, right? They burn a lot of diesel, they produce CO2. So there is a play, you can put solar and other stuff. So there you can replace, those are the things. And the red one, here you have to put the molecule like hydrogen, green hydrogen. So for example, iron and steel plant, right? You can make green steel. Instead of reforming methane or coal, make CO hydrogen. You use 100% green hydrogen, put into DRI, make steel, right? No need to use any coal or any, blast furnace for that matter. Similarly, cement, right? You burn hydrogen, give the heat, chemicals, right? And then refinery need a lot of hydrogen. So today almost 98% out of 100%, almost 98% goes to refinery and fertilizer. Fertilizer means ammonia and urea. And out of that, almost 50-50, 48 or 49, the 49% goes to ammonia industry and balance goes to, refinery. So those kind of area, 100% can be hydrogen. People are talking about airplane, right? They are also that sustainable aviation fuel, SAF. We can make 100% green hydrogen. So that will come in the future. And then heavy road, right? So I talk about the light road and the heavy road, right? If you go for 1,000 kilometer, 1,500, 2,000 kilometer long distance, so you need a lot of, fuel. So in the terms of hydrogen tank or, liquid hydrogen, store it and that can run. This is how shaping, this India energy bucket, till December 2022. If you see the thermal power 57% and the installed capacity of renewable 40 is gradually increasing. And then LCOE, levelized cost of, this energy, electron cost. So cheapest one is the Chile, $29 per megawatt. And the next one is India, 31. So we are at par with the world level on the electron cost. So these are the Panchamrit. So non-fossil energy, 500 gigawatt by 2030. Then, 50% energy till to RE, and then carbon reduction 1 million ton equivalent, 1 billion ton equivalent by 2030. Then reduce carbon intensity 45% by 2030, and then net zero, complete net zero by 2017. So these are the three things by which we can, do these things. So one is the greening the grid, that is already happening. We are putting green electron in the grid, so that is a greening the grid. Second one is the greening the mobility, that EVs and other thing coming up, and then hydrogen vehicle will take over. So all this mobility and other thing that will take up slowly, so greening the mobility. And the last one is the greening the industry. Like I talk about all this refinery, all those, ammonia, urea, and then steel. So those industry can be 100% green hydrogen based. So these are the three pillar, three lever to make decarbonization of the society. So these are the few initiatives. I don't want to read all those things. So these are the policy already in place by Government of India, and these are the initiatives already taken. Then on mobility, what government is giving for mobility sector, and where the already the lead has been taken. This is hydrogen based. People are talking about fuel cell, right? That recently Reliance and other people, even Adani is talking to working with Ashok Leyland, that burning hydrogen in the internal combustion engine instead of burning petrol or diesel, right? Then I told you that this greening the industry, right? All those urea, ammonia plant, a refinery that can be fed with green hydrogen. So what are the challenges? Of course, you pace that speed we need to pick up. There is a big challenge on that. And then scale of the project. So if we reach to 500 gigawatt, so India needs to install 20 gigawatt per annum till 2030, and in wind is 12 gigawatt, but we are at 4 gigawatt in solar and 2.5 gigawatt in wind. So there is a big gap. So that speed we have to get to reach that goal. And of course, these projects, this green hydrogen or green chemicals, everybody loves to have green, but who will pay, right? So the proper off-taker with proper price, proper premium, that should be in place. Then only, this project can take off. So that's my end of my slides. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Prajit, again for being in time and also for giving us these concepts of hydrogen, 4 colors of hydrogen. I thought there were only 3. You brought in turquoise into it, so I am sure there are a lot of questions coming on it. You also talked a lot about decarbonization. And finally, the heartening thing you spoke about the initiatives. 2-3 slides you showed initiatives that are being taken by the government, by the industry to look at alternate fuels and all those things. It's a very welcome step, and then we'll talk more about that in the times to come. But through all the 4 presentations, the 4 presentations that you heard so far, the main thing is how are we going to finance it. So we have with us from NIIF, National Investment and Infrastructure Fund, Saurabh Suneja, who calls himself as a person who is supporting investment in green projects, and he has hands-on experience in a green project. He is an MBA from Harvard and fellow of the John F. Kennedy School of Government and a BTech from IIT Delhi. Welcome, Saurabh, and look forward to your words on how we finance all these projects.
First of all, it's a pleasure to be back in Trivandrum. It had been a while, and when the Trivandrum Management Association called, it was that, yes, fantastic, finally getting to a beach location from Delhi. So that's fantastic. And thanks a lot for the kind words from the moderator. I should clarify that some of those web search things sometimes get mixed up. There are 2 or 3 Saurabh Sunejas, so I'm not a BTech at all, and I did a particularly interesting program at the Harvard Kennedy School. It is called Infrastructure in a Market Economy. So just a few kind of corrections or edits there. And with that, let's jump in. I had also put on a personal timer, and I'll try to keep to it. With your permission.
You can see the asking rate, right?
Yes,
absolutely.
Absolutely. And hopefully this clicker works. All right. So let me start for a minute in helping you appreciate what I'll be talking about and why, so that you're not lost or puzzled by why these strange messages. So I work for an organization called National Investment and Infrastructure Fund. We are fundamentally in the area of equity financing, and we have a bias in favor of infrastructure. And therefore, what I chose to talk about within this topic of sustainability, is also informed by what I thought our firm stands for, and also what is at least my area of understanding and knowledge. So I'll try to make some narrower points, but I'll hope that this adds to the discussion that we are having in this very broad panel. And also, I was not surprised that across all the speakers, even when Dr. Chatterjee was talking about urbanization, how many times she uttered the word infrastructure. So there is a link between sustainability and how we plan for and finance infrastructure. So essentially, here is what my thought process around it was, that one is that putting private investment to work in innovative, different and productive fashions would be important to answer to the need for development or aspirations that we have as a society. And second bit is, and I'll kind of take a leaf out of what Mr. Mahesh was talking about and what Pradyut almost finished with, is that even when you look at the CO2 emissions, the largest chunk falls on electricity, and there are a lot of clean energy solutions that are trying to respond to it. And I wanted to leave you with a few thoughts on what's happening with respect to technology as well as financing of this green energy. And with that, across the next 5 or 6 minutes that I have, I would talk to you about 4 things. First is, what is the role of private investment in infrastructure and specifically energy? Second is some of the investment trends that we see emerging in the area of clean energy. Pradyut was able to give you a deep dive into hydrogen specifically, but I'll be at one higher level of zoom. Then, trying to draw a line between the private investment thesis and institutional capital, because that's a fascinatingly interesting class of capital that can do far more work in India as compared to what is happening today. And lastly, I'll attempt to tell you how NIIF is trying to play a role in galvanizing this institutional capital in areas including infrastructure and clean energy. So here we go. First is, this is just a quick pie of the 5-year infrastructure investment plan that we are in. This is called the National Infrastructure Pipeline. The biggest chunk of it, around a quarter of it, is for development of energy initiative, so electricity, power, distribution, transmission, and so on. The more curious thing is who is financing what? Up till the 5-year planning cycle was there, Niti Aayog used to produce beautiful data sets on what's happening with the infrastructure financing. So the message that I wanted to leave you with is, one, the need for more money to get into infrastructure development has been there. We are doing better than before, but we need to do even more. And I would confess that in many cases, we realize that availability of money is not so much of a constraint. It is about conceptualizing and putting developmental initiatives out there. But when we talk about just numbers and financing, energy, and especially renewable energy, is where private capital is carrying a lot of weight. So even back in 2017, 2018, Niti Aayog's estimates was that 85% of renewable energy capacity in India was getting developed through private capital. With that, let me take you to 3 interesting trends that at least I, in my personal capacity, I have started to observe, and what are encouraging things. First is that technology is rapidly evolving, and it is, it should be a celebration to understand what all is happening. So, storage solutions are coming to scale. There is a lot of investment and cost reduction happening with battery storage, pumped hydrogen, etc. Then, there is this low to no intermittency renewable energy solutions that are getting developed. So these are, governments are tendering out around the clock power. There is a lot of interest and projects that are coming out in the area of offshore energy. And the even more fascinating part is that many of these technologies are now emerging from an area where government was supporting them with, in a way, subsidy or artificially high feed-in tariffs or pricing to a zone where they are commercially competing. And, linking to that, I think government policy has been very supportive and complementary to how the technology has also evolved. The second bit is that we believe for bankable projects which are nicely structured, debt or equity financing is not really a constraint. In fact, there is a clamor for capital to get invested in the area of clean energy. I'll just give you an example. One of the segments of businesses that NIF owns through our funds is a pair of infrastructure NBFCs, and we have a loan book of around 30,000 crore rupees today, and about 60% of that is actually deployed in clean energy projects. And lastly and importantly, and I'm kind of speaking to the industry that I'm from, which is private equity, I would say safely that the amount of money that is chasing private equity funds that are focused on clean energy or infrastructure is like never before. So this is one of the largest assemblers of institutional capital anywhere in the world, including in India. The only purpose of this slide is to help all of you appreciate that institutional capital is a big owner globally of infrastructure assets. So globally, pension funds and insurance funds and sovereign corpuses, these buckets of institutional capital are actually the largest private owners of infrastructure anywhere in the world. This story is now rapidly getting replicated in emerging markets. So over the past 20 years or so, what we have seen is that infrastructure is the largest class within the corpuses of these large investors that has exploded or ballooned. And finally, coming to my last message on, so what is NIF and what are we doing? Why are we relevant in this space? So NIF was created a little more than 6 years back by the government of India, essentially to be a pool or a vehicle that could attract foreign institutional capital in the area of infrastructure and other developmental themes in the country. And over the past about 5 or 6 years, we have received capital contributions from a large ecosystem of foreign institutional investors. So essentially, we are trying to transform this whole thesis on attractiveness of big pools of capital, especially the ones which are outside of India, and bringing them home to India. So we collect capital from around the world and deploy it, especially in India. And this is my last slide. This is just an example of what can get done, trying to put all this together. So around 5 years back, NIF and the government of UK had gotten together, and we developed the largest clean energy fund, which is focused on a single country anywhere in Asia. So there is around $740 million of capital, which has been brought together, and there are umpteen businesses that have been formed within this fund. So it operates the largest waste to green energy project in Indore. It has got a large e-mobility vehicle. It has exposures into renewable energy, including industrial uses. And I'll stop there and happy to answer questions later.
You have answered, I think, you presented what they wanted, but I'm sure there will be a lot more questions coming. But one thing that came out of his presentation is that funds are not the problem. Basically, how we are going to utilize it, where we are going to utilize it, and what are going to be the benefits of it are going to be what is important. So I will just try to sum up whatever we did. We have 22 minutes to go. We have been well within time, I thought, unless you have a lot of questions. I would like to just sum up with a few points that I wanted to add up to this, which I made yesterday. Next slide, please. Sorry. So I just wanted to, we are all talking about stories now, Kerala story and all these things. What is the story today? We had a lot of stories on sustainability and environment. Today, if you look at it, the challenges that we see in front of it, many things we're talking about. Roads not being there, rivers getting polluted, mining sector problems. But really, if you look at it for me today, 19th of May 2023, very concerning things for the country. One, we are slipping on the SDG index, the Sustainability Goal Index. We are at 121. Bhutan, Nepal, Bangladesh are in the 70s. We are at 121. And in the last year, we slipped 2 points. And where did we slip? We slipped on SDG 11. SDG 11 is urban cities, the cities, sustainability of cities. That is where we lost out. There are many things like hunger and all these things. Of course, this is not taking much of controversy like the hunger index and all that. So this is something. Second thing that we are finding, abnormal and frequent extreme weather conditions. You're already seeing it. Floods in Rajasthan, drought in Assam. We've seen it in the last 6 months, all these things. And we are going to see. I come from Hyderabad. April month is the hottest month. 10 to 12 days of heavy rain we had. It was like winter. We didn't go about 24 degrees. But of course, last 1 week it has been hot. But Hyderabad never rained. I've been living in Hyderabad now for 20 years. It never rained in April. It rained 10 days continuously, cats and dogs. Can't believe. Another thing that we are talking about, predictable and preventable diseases the spread pattern is changing. You used to have a lot of summer-borne diseases. You don't find them now. You found that in winter. There are some diseases which used to come in Kerala, which are coming in Kashmir now. A lot of change in that. This I should have taken last, but greenwashing is something happening. We are talking, everybody is talking about sustainability, ESG, but most of the reports that people are making along, including some of the biggest corporates, are all greenwashing. You know, I hope you know what is greenwashing. We are waste managers, as I told you. There are a lot of unaccounted waste. Any industry, most of the most toxic waste is created by the industry. And in the industry also, the most toxic are pharma, leather, textile. These are the most toxic because we take a lot of waste, I'm telling you. In any industry which receives a license from the Pollution Control Board to start manufacturing also has the waste that they generate listed at the last page of it. They say, I will generate this much of ETP sludge, I will this much of tar sludge, all those things come on the last page. But finally, if you audit it, those sludges are not coming for safe disposal or for safe recycling. Where is the waste going? This is a big concern today, unaccounted. Thirdly, post-COVID concerns. Everywhere we are hearing about this post-COVID concerns. Heart diseases, everything. COVID is gone. On the other side, I'm talking about COVID. And the fourth one is the toxic air. We talk about fumes, we talk about dust, we talk about the Delhi air quality, but this is toxic air that is coming. Where is it coming from? So these are the issues that is really challenging us. But we heard about a lot of good initiatives that are coming up in the country from most of the speakers. See, we had some very excellent things happening in the last 5 to 6 months. We had the first budget in which green was mentioned, a union budget which was called a green budget. It had mentioned a green mission, it had a net zero mission, it had a hydrogen mission. In fact, I wanted to ask Pradyut what is hydrogen mission and how is it going? We'll ask that question later. The mangrove mission, the mangroves was also mentioned by architect Mahesh. So the government is putting, I think it is 25,000 crores or something is what is put for the mangrove mission alone. You have something called Gobardhan scheme. So the first time budget is acknowledged that money has to be put into environment, money has to be put into sustainable solutions. This is one. Second, our efforts towards clean energy, renewable energy has been excellent. I beg to differ with you, or one of us has to stand corrected. The target for clean energy is in 2030, it's not 60% according to me, 50%, and as on yesterday we have achieved 43%. 2030 we have to achieve 50%, we achieved 43% yesterday. So we are very much on track on all these things. Second, I said this, I asked the question also. I think we have managed the pandemic quite well. Right or wrong? For discussion, we can talk after that. Or rather, I will word it this way. We are almost ready for the next battle. If you have a next pandemic coming, we are ready. We know where to go. We know where to do it. We are ready for it. This is a good thing that we have done in the last 6 to 8 months. We are close race to be ODF. The Prime Minister declared ODF. We are almost there. I mean, some statistics today say that we are ODF today. The country is ODF. Zero emission EVs, 30% by 2030. We are almost achieving it. And so I said we came in a fossil fuel car, but I'm sure next year when you look at it, at this time when you have the next convention, 60% of the cars are going to be in EVs. And we are very well on way for the net zero by 2070. So this is the scenario today. The story today is like this. We have these challenges there, but we have a lot of green shoots. We have a lot of green initiatives, green movements taking place. We can add on to this and discuss if we have time today. There's 16 minutes left. We have time for all those things. Next, can you move the slide, please? I just wanted to put this because the whole concept, the whole 2-day seminar that you're having is on a Trivandrum 5.0. And I said that these are the 3 things you would look at. You would look at your climate resilience, resilience. We have to have initiatives towards that for the resource resilience and for your economic resilience. We have to stick on to what is SDG 11, sustainable cities and communities, make our cities settlements. And this should be the target emanating out of this conference, which has come out with a very noble theme of prosperity beyond profit. Next, please. I just wanted to put, we talked about a lot of good things that are happening. I told you I'm a waste manager, I come from a waste managing company, but just let me tell about a few initiatives that we are already doing across the world on some of the major things that we have talked about. The slide on the left extreme is the Manali zone of Chennai Corporation, where the municipal waste is being collected. 2 important things in this: all vehicles are battery operated, 0 emissions. Point number 2, the whole zone is lady managed. The supervisor is lady, the HR manager is lady, all the auto drivers, pickers, everybody is managed. And we do 35 cities in India, and Manali is one of our best because the ladies take pride in maintaining their waste collection autos. You can see how nice it is. I think even you go to look at today, it's like, this is one thing. This is both inclusion coming there is 0, the gas emissions coming down today. The next one, what you see is a biogas plant at Hyderabad, which we have. This is again a very, very important thing in the sense, the methane, the landfill gas that comes out of the waste that is lying there, the waste, mountains of waste. You had a free waste disposal in Brahmapuram where everything burnt off by its own, but there where the mountains of gas we had, we collect biogas out of it. And what do we do with this biogas? It becomes auto fuel. And this auto fuel, first we use it for the trucks that collect the waste. So it is a circularity there. Gas comes out of the waste, that waste puts on the vehicle, that goes and collects the waste and comes back. But we have more gas that will be available, which we want to give it into the national grid, we want to give it into we want to sell it. This one. The third one again, town planners and architects might like, this is the Marina Sands Bay in Singapore. Today, in Singapore, when you don't talk about the Merlion, we talked about this one, 55 stories. What we do here, this particular building, 55 stores comprising residential, commercial, entertainment, all these things, the entire waste arising comes out through a chute system. We call it the automatic refuse collection system. All the waste goes down 3 floors below the building, completely through chutes, nothing, no smell, nothing coming anywhere, no rat getting into it, no cockroach coming out of it. From there again, the waste is sucked by a vacuum system. So you don't see waste anywhere, you don't smell waste anywhere in the Marina Sands Bay. I'm not sure exactly how much we build it. This is something designed, built and being operated by us. Here what you see is Delhi. This is 2,000 tons of garbage from the homes of Delhi being converted into 24 megawatt of power. We are about 8 plants like this, and the idea is that we have 500 megawatts of power in the next 4 to 5 months. These are all running things, sir. Visiting Delhi, visiting Hyderabad, please, we can show you all these things. And this is how the plant looks, completely green and nice. 2,000 tons of waste come in here. Expansion of another 2,000 going on there. This we talked about ocean today, turtles having plastic in their mouth and all these things. This is Sohar Port in Oman, where, now today there is a law called the MARPOL law, the Marine Pollution Law, which says ships sailing in the sea cannot throw any of their waste into the sea. This is the law. And many of the, 90% of the shipping companies have signed this treaty, the Marpol Act. So what do? They don't throw the waste into the ship, including the sewage, the paper, the kitchen waste, everything they bring to the next port and then they discharge it. So what we do in Sohar, we also do this in the United States, in Corpus Christi and in Texas. What we do is we have this vessel, this is our vessel, this is like the trucks that carry vessel. This ship goes into the sea, collects the waste from the ships and brings it ashore where it is taken for treatment. So this is as per the rules. And the last what I talked, again I go back to architect Mahesh, he was talking about shortage of sand and gravel and all these things. The entire construction and demolition debris that you find lying across our cities, this gets converted into various useful products. This is sand coming out of it. And most of our roads you can see, today also I saw when I was coming to Trivandrum, many places the roads being in bad shape, lot of buildings being struck down. All that can be converted into useful material which we don't have, natural resource recovery. And this is some business which gives you 99% recovery from waste into useful products. Even electronic waste does not give that. I was just showing you some snippets to show that we still have hope and the things are not bad. We are on an upward trend. We have exactly 11 minutes of permitted time allowed, and I would like to start with the panelists asking questions on raising some issues, and then we'd like to give more time to all of you. I would request, if you have any questions for Architect Mahesh, we started off, the three of you, any questions to Architect Mahesh? No, if they have any questions to you, I asked. You can ask some questions, because any questions to him, or none of you have any questions?
So for this national infrastructure pipeline, so there's a recent paper that has come out looking at both the monetization plan and the infrastructure pipeline. And again, I'm speaking from my interest area that we see this huge infrastructure need in cities, right, going forward. But it seems that there's not much of an urban focus, particularly in the monetization aspect of the infrastructure. Can you shed some lights on it? Is there any kind of understanding of how much of this will be channelized towards cities, or how can cities leverage both the NIP and the budgets going into it?
Involved question. In the interest of that timer, which I really respect, I'll try to curtail it and then let's have a further conversation. So the broad calculation is that this national monetization pipeline, and the time frame is somewhat similar between the infrastructure and the monetization pipeline. The ambition is that about 6% of the scale of the national infrastructure pipeline, which is creation of new infrastructure, could in fact be funded by monetization of revenue earning assets that already exist in the government system. So the national monetization pipeline talks about what can government monetize, and this is the central government, this is not really touching the state government projects. And generally the equation is that today, broadly, private sector is contributing somewhere between 20 to 22% of infrastructure, new infrastructure investments. The central government and the state government is say 50-50. So optimistically, if you say that equal amount of assets would also be available with the state governments, probably 10 to 12% of the new development needs could be funded by this monetization of existing assets. And the beauty about monetization is that the assets are not going anywhere. They will continue to and probably provide even better public service delivery, but the capital gets released and the government has it to spend more on developing new infrastructure. Now, I think the moot point is how to invest into urban infrastructure. And again, the reality is that a disproportionate amount of heavy lifting, the governments, central and state, they themselves would have to do with respect to developing urban infrastructure. So while private sector can probably tackle 90% of renewable energy, 80% of airports and 80% of ports, it is great that more money will be put into the coffers of government, which has to do the heavy lifting for urban infrastructure.
Good afternoon. I was just wondering that you are in the field of waste management and disposal, RE infrastructure, and in fact I used to deal with Ramki Singapore when the company started. So is it possible to design a solution for Thiruvananthapuram, a city-specific model, and our investment infrastructure fund person is also there. Do you think it is possible to create a viable model with the user fee, etc., put in, and equity and debt coming in? Because Kerala is grappling with this huge problem, and I am looking at some, practical kind of approach rather than talking about the big macro issues. Thank you.
Ramki Enviro, which we are known earlier, we rebranded as Re-Sustainability because now it is no longer waste management, it is sustainability. We were not in Kerala actively for the last 12-13 years due to certain reasons. Although we have been across the country, we have been across 12 countries rather, and about 55 locations in India. Post Brahmapuram, there was a lot of invitations to us to come and discuss this, both from government, from the municipalities, as well as from the political establishment. So we have started a system of dialogue with them. We have given them some solutions. We have always told that every solution has to be comprehensive. You cannot look at waste. If this flower is going to become a waste, you cannot simply say that taking it and putting it in garbage is the end of it. How we collect it, how is the vehicle going to be it, after it reaches there, what is it going to be, or but rather is putting it into a waste at the last, the best solution. So you have to have a comprehensive look at it. We are talking to the government, and we are ready to work with the government on this. And we also feel that certain initiatives that recently have come out, like Brahmapuram, they're looking at CNG and all those things are part of the proposal that we gave. So, sir, I'll openly say two things. What you call biomining and what you call compost are only myths. We can only show it in the small municipalities, but these are all not large-scale expandable projects. What we need are user fee-based collections from the household, going up to the man doing waste management, getting paid. It is not a free service, sir. You need to pay for a utility. In a city, you pay for electricity, you pay for water, you pay taxes. You also need to pay for a waste management. If this comes in, waste management will become okay. I hope I have answered my question.
User fee and making services cost reflective is probably a pretty good echelon to target. Just from a few experiences that we have had on waste management, there is a firm that NIF ecosystem now happens to own. It is called Ever Enviro. It today operates the largest, probably South Asia's largest waste to energy system. It processes around 650,000 tons of waste per day. This is in Indore. And the backbone of it actually lies with great waste segregation. So, I think our pitch to municipalities has been, show us 300 metric tons of waste per day, and we can create a waste to energy solution that does not require any subsidy or other favoritism from the government. Give us land, give us 300 metric tons of waste, segregated organic waste per day. If there is a city in Trivandrum which is doing a great job of waste segregation, I think there can be a business opportunity built on top of it, which then can feed into that circular economy and so on.
This is regarding the investment. With ambitious targets, and we don't even allocate any fund for the wave energy. What is the reason for it? It's totally not interested for the green energy program. Wave energy part is totally neglected. There is not even a slightest allocation even for research on this part. What is it? What is the reason for it?
Private capital is actually spreading everywhere. It is trying to find new technology solutions, and a lot of what we see today is a result of private capital chasing technology which is getting developed pretty sporadically. So I think the big picture is that Indian government and international governments also have the appetite of procuring a lot of green energy. And what I have broadly seen is that all these technologies have this path where they are supported by high purchase prices, which help a new technology scale, and then after some time the economies of scale and technology evolves, and then they start to operate in commercial markets. And I agree that wave energy has not climbed that ladder. I think more kind of publicity or awareness work has to happen so that it comes into the popular imagination.
So it had a wonderful session, starting from, as I told you, the legendary architect Mahesh. Very happy to know that you are taking green initiatives. Dr. Chatterjee about the cities, how important the cities are, how vital the cities are in the whole scheme of things, how cities are contributing 60 to 80% of the GDP, occupying only 3% of the space, and all development almost 50 kilometers around cities. So how vital cities have to be, and then this program, today's program is all about Trivandrum as a city and where you're going on your 5.0. Hydrogen, the 4 colors of hydrogen we heard, and we know that that's going to come. EV is also going to come. We didn't have a session on EVs, but hydrogen is closely following, and I'm sure in about 10 years, fossil fuel-based vehicles are going to be out of the market. Almost sure. It's all the Teslas and all are going to catch up. And funding, there's no limit to it. You need to have the projects. Wave energy, I think, has not been. Some of the lobbies, sir, I was answering. Some of the lobbies are not well promoted by the powers that be, like the waste management industry. It's like I said, if you say in Malayalam, it is a kuppa business, the kuppa totti business. So nobody cares for us. Nobody gives us support. I always say, if compost from the landfills are given some kind of subsidy and promotion, it will move. Why put in these chemical fertilizers which people know are not really good for the land? You put in biological fertilizer to land, but nobody supports. It costs 1 rupee to manufacture, 5 rupees to transport, and then who buys it? So this is the problem with all. So we need the support. We don't have much. So wave industry might be all those things. So all in all, it was an excellent session. Thank you all for your patience in spite of the lunch calling on you. And I thank the organizers, TMA, Rajesh, who was instrumental in bringing me to here. Thank you and good luck.
Thank you, sir. Now may I request Sri Sanjeev Jha, AGM of SBI, to hand over a memento as a token of gratitude to Bobby E. Kurian, the moderator of the session. I would like to request Sri Paul, Senior Manager, Federal Bank, to hand over a memento as a token of gratitude to our architect N. Mahesh. May I request Sri Vimal, Deputy Manager Muthoot, to hand over the memento to Dr. Sudeshna Chatterjee. I would like to request Air Marshal IP Vipin, Member TMA, to hand over the memento to Mr. Pradyut Majid. May I request Mr. Vinod SS, Management Committee Member TMA and Project Director Small Satellite Launch Vehicle VSSC, to hand over the memento to Mr. Saurabh Suneja.
Thank you so much. Such an insightful session indeed. We are grateful to the eminent moderator and the panelists for giving us a realistic picture and also showing us how we can move forward towards sustainability. Truly, this was prosperity way more than profits. A thumping round of applause for the speakers on the stage, please.